Oh, thank you. Thanks for the... And sorry Grahame couldn't be here. He sends his apologies, but Grahame from Collier from Tissues Consultancy, he undertook the external evaluation that we're going to talk about today. So I miss you, Grahame, but he's with us in spirit. So Waste to Art in the NetWaste region, I've put a map up there of the NetWaste region. So we have 26 councils within our region, from Blue Mountains out to Broken Hill, so it's a really large area. And we introduced Waste to Art 13 years ago, which I just can't get my head around. I've never been involved in a project for this length of time, and never in my wildest dreams did I think that this project would, or this program would have the longevity that it has. But, I mean, we've had to take time out along the way and have a look and see that it still met our needs. When we first introduced it, waste didn't have the high profile across our region that it does now. So we've had to change and adapt it as we've moved along. And I hope that we've done that well. But it was really important to me that we had an external evaluation done. About 5 years ago, I started to wonder if this project was really meeting our needs. You know, was it still relevant for our councils? Or was it just getting soaked up into the art world, which is fantastic, but we need it to do what we want it to do from a waste, a regional waste group perspective. So it's an engagement tool. Was it still relevant to our communities? Just really briefly, the way it works, we have usually about 15 of our councils participate in Waste to Art every year. So each of the councils that participate, they'll have a local competition, and we provide them with a whole range of resources that can help them do that. And then the winning artworks we transport to a regional exhibition, which is hosted by a different council every year. So, for example, we've been to Menindee, we've been to Forbes, we've been to Parkes, we've been to Mudgee, been to Bathurst, Dubbo, Orange. So a different council takes on that role of hosting the exhibition. And I think that that has worked really well. We then also follow up with a travelling photographic exhibition. So we take photos of about 20 to 30 of the artworks from the regional exhibition, and they travel around our region over the next 6 months. So even if a council hasn't been part of the Waste to Art, they can take the photos, put them up in the library, in the council foyer, wherever. But it's just another way of continuing it on until the next year. It's an annual event, by the way. Yeah, so time to step back and have a look, see where we're at. Now, Grahame put this together, this particular slide, and when I read it, I thought, oh, well, this will just be my presentation done. You know, this really sums it up. I was so blown away at the reaction that we got from our community and our stakeholders in this project. Like I said before, we have done internal evaluations along the way, but to do an external evaluation and have such positive feedback was just wow, because I genuinely wanted to know if this still was a worthwhile project, because it does take a lot of effort, and it's a big ask on a lot of our councils as well. So yeah, pretty good comments. But the one that I probably want to point out, because you can read them all yourself of course, but Waste to Art has influenced my council to take a much more in-depth approach to managing waste. Wow, that was fantastic. Great feedback. And this is typical of the comments that we got. So I really was quite surprised and quite excited too, I have to say. So Waste to Art sits within the NetWaste Waste Education Strategy. I mean, you can read those for yourself, and I'll leave it there long enough for you to, but what I would say, this is not about measuring tonnage of waste. You know, and it's really hard to evaluate it sometimes. It's really hard for some of our council members to get their head around, well, how do you know if this is really working? You know, it's a difficult thing to evaluate. So, to me, it does link with waste behaviours and awareness. So we started off as an awareness program, and we certainly, as a result of this evaluation, are fairly confident that we are encouraging people to think about their own behaviours and change some of those behaviours. I think that, in my experience, this project is really useful for small communities. So last year, for example, we had the regional at Condobolin, Lachlan Shire Council. It's a small little community. We had over 1,000 people came through the door to look at waste to art in Condobolin. You know, that's amazing. This year, we're going out to Narromine, so we're putting it up in the Sports and Fitness Centre. So you never know where you're going to end up in these communities, but that's part of the charm of it. And also the importance of the flexibility is it's really critical to the success of this project. So whilst we provide a lot of information to our councils, they don't all have to do it the same. There's a lot of flexibility that's built into the program so that they can change it to suit their community if necessary. In the small communities too, I just mentioned that so Narromine, we've got the school students from hospitality at the high school going to do the catering for us. And so the challenge to them is that you have to do this as a waste-free job. So, you know, we can extend on it. And in a small community, everybody hears about it and knows about it. Okay, we'll move on. It also sits within the EPA waste education strategy. I think probably the areas that I'm really focused on are those first ones. So increase knowledge and skills, build positive attitudes, promote positive behaviour. And from the feedback that we have received about this project, it's very, very positive, which is fantastic. We even have councils that don't have recycling services participate in waste to art. I was really surprised at that. So we're not just looking at recycling, you know, we're moving up that waste hierarchy, which we've talked about a lot in this particular stream, education stream today. When Grahame Collier came on board, I've worked with Grahame a lot, so we have a great relationship and a very open and honest relationship, and he told me that he really wasn't that sure that this was a project that could move forward in the future. He really wasn't sure if this was going to continue to be a robust project that's useful. Well, I'll just keep going and I'll tell you what he thinks now when we get to the last slide. So the methodology, face-to-face interviews, phone interviews, online surveys, and project managers. And we did interviews with stakeholders, so people like, we have a curator that works with us every year to set up the exhibition, because to us it's really important that it be professionally done. So community people, Arts Out West were involved as a stakeholder, council staff who weren't actually within the waste section. We thought that was important to get feedback from them. School teachers, and every year we have different judges, so we involve judges in that in those interviews as well, which was really good. And I just love this comment: the balance is good between the art and community development objective and the waste objective in our LGA. Hearts and heads are involved in both aspects. That to me is really, really key to the success of this project. Hearts and heads are involved in both aspects. That's fantastic. And you can just see on the side there, so we ask questions about, you know, would you continue to deliver waste to art? And look at the results. It surprised me too. Stakeholders, what they've told us. Again, I'm not going to read them all out, you can read them for yourself. Just the key one for me was down the bottom there where it says, it's a lot of work to coordinate it, but it provides a non-threatening and engaging way to talk to people about waste and consumerism. And waste to art gives us an opportunity to talk to people that we probably wouldn't be able to talk to otherwise. You know, it's a really broad scope for people to be involved in waste to art. So in that way, it's very, very valuable tool. Artists. I should mention that this waste to art, so commercial artists can be involved. We've set up the categories so that a professional artist, there is a category that they can enter into, and then there are categories where community people can enter. So they're not competing against one another. And again, I think that that's really vital. You know, the farmer that dabbles in his shed with old machinery and whatnot, he can be involved in waste to art as well. He would never have considered himself an artist, but their work's amazing. My father was a huge supporter of waste to art. He was a carpenter, and he used to get involved every year. Never considered himself an artist, but wouldn't have missed waste to art. We now have a Herb Clarke Memorial Trophy Award because my dad's no longer with us, but it really touches people within the community, which is really special. The artists, the list there showing how many times they've been involved. So some of the artists that come on board, you know, they are there every year, and they're ringing me up in the lead up to Waste to Art, talking about what they're going to do, what they're going to make. What do you think about this? Well, I'm not an artist, but I love the fact that they'll ring me up and talk to me about it. We have introduced a waste theme every year. And the idea of that was to move out of the waste, to move it into the waste area, because, as I said before, I was a little concerned that it was getting caught up in the art world. So every year, the council that hosts the regional exhibition will talk to them, see if there's a particular problem waste that they'd like to feature. This year, Narromine has chosen polystyrene. So not all the artworks have to be made from that one waste item, but it just gives us a chance to highlight that particular waste item with our media stuff, with we've introduced tours, so we do tours with schools and community groups. We do little workshops as part of that, and we can talk to them about those particular problem wastes as well. Just the artworks down the bottom, seeing as we're in the artist section, you know, the one on this side, that's aluminium cans. What a great way to start a conversation. The next one along is junk mail. You know, that particular artist, he's very, very environmentally concerned and always has a very, very deep and meaningful message that goes with it. But look at the work. The next one, this is from a school student in Dubbo. So just everyday plastic items that she picked up from the waste centre, the recovery shop. And then the last one on the other side is plastic bags. So they're not all that good. You know, there's from here to here on the scale, but they all certainly do get some conversations going. Coordinators. Every council has a coordinator to coordinate their local competition and exhibition, and I know sometimes it's a lot of work for them. Again, you can read the comments yourself. We do have one no. So should NetWaste continue to deliver the Waste to Art program as a signature education? No, that was a council that was amalgamated. And I was looking for the negative stuff. You know, wow, that's incredible. So, is the program perfect? Was everyone positive? Nearly everyone, but no, not everyone. There were some comments, and this is what I wanted. I wanted to hear some of this feedback so we can learn from it and we can move on, make it better, because it seems that we don't have much choice from the comments that we're getting. So 75% of our entries are from people who've entered before, so people want to look at ways that we can broaden it out and encourage people who haven't been involved before to come on board. I think that's a really good comment. We'll have to look at ways that we can do that. Not convinced that it has any waste education value, mainly an arts initiative. We don't think that anyone is necessarily changing their waste behaviours because of Waste to Art. We have to prove to them that it is. So I have to come up with some ways that we can do that. And I don't have these answers yet. The resource intensiveness of the program, it does require significant and substantial time contribution. Note, feedback varied on this issue. So this was probably the one issue where we got a lot of suggestions on how we could improve that, which is great. And it does take a considerable amount of time and commitment at the council end. Local community became less interested in the program. Program abandoned 2 years ago due to lack of support. Well, we're going to work on getting them back on board, especially if we can take some of the learnings from this and do something positive with it. what needs to be changed. So there are some councils that have sort of mentioned that we need to reinvigorate councils not currently involved, and we've got 26 councils. The first year that we had, or first and second year that we had Waste to Art, I think we had 24 councils involved. So we're down to 15, which I still think is pretty good, but it would be nice to get a few more of them on board. So some of this feedback, some of this research is going to be useful in the way that we engage with the councils to see if we can get some of them to come along and help us. Some suggestions, so data about behavioural intent from people attending the local and regional exhibition, brief survey at the event and or online. We do a survey, and I struggle a lot with trying to work out what information to get. We change it every year, and it is an issue. So we need to look at that again. The idea of pledges, so maybe that's a good way to go. Data relating to any change that Waste to Art has either caused or has significantly contributed to. This is from one of our larger councils. They're really struggling to try and justify the amount of money that they put into it. I mean, it's not an expensive project. It's for NetWaste, it's about $30,000. We have a major sponsor, which is Sims Metal, and they give us $10,000, and that covers our prize money. So in the scheme of things, it's not a hugely expensive project, but for some of our smaller councils, I can see that it is an issue. So how do we give them more evidence of why it's worthwhile for them to be involved? One of our larger councils has decided that they're not going to do an exhibition as they have in the past with lots and lots of different entries. They do one large community artwork, and they build a whole lot of education into that and approaches that they can measure, and they can get some feedback that's going to maybe get their councillors to continue supporting Waste to Art, because I know that's the area that they're having the difficulty with. But having said that, that particular community that I'm talking about, one year their council didn't participate in Waste to Art, so the community came on board and they made it happen themselves. They ran their own local competition. Amazing. I wanted to mention the schools Waste to Art component of the program because we got a lot of comments about that, and I'm really torn about this. We do a lot of work with schools in our region, and a number of artists have said to me, don't go down that path because we won't then participate. We won't enter artworks. So if it just becomes a school program, I think we're changing the whole way this works and why it works. So I'm going to resist that one, I think. I'm going to try to anyway. Schools are certainly part of it, and there's a category for high schools, there's a category for primary schools, and we have lots of early learning centres participating as well. But I think it's important to keep it across the community and not just focusing on schools. Be really interested to hear what any of you have to say about that too. Evaluation outcomes. So I'll let you have a read. So when I said before about Grahame's comment, you know, he said when he came into this, he wasn't quite sure about how this project should continue. And he told me that, you know, someone who's doing an evaluation always comes out of that project with some sort of a view of their own. Well, he has told me loud and clear that this project should continue, that the comments that he got from all of the people that were involved in the evaluation were so positive that NetWaste can't let it go. We have to keep it going. It's too successful. And that's about it. So any questions?
Any questions? As part of the competition, are any of the artworks for sale?
Yes, that's their choice. So if they want to make their artworks for sale, we put a little for sale sign on the label that goes with their artwork. And we have we sort of got caught up in the early days felt like a bit of a broker. So we didn't want to go down that path. So we have a list made out of all the artworks that are for sale. So if anybody expresses interest, we give them the sheet and they contact the artist directly.
Great, thanks.
Okay.
Is there a minimum proportion of recycled material, or does it have to all be recycled material? Like maybe you're using waste envelopes, but are you allowed to use new paint, or like how does that work?
In the judging criteria, I mean, one of the criteria is that most of the materials used are waste.
Okay.
So we have
Majority.
to allow. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Oh, we've got another question.
What tends to happen with the artwork after there's an exhibition? Do people keep their artwork, or do people dismantle it and use it for another piece in the future, or what's the end of life for that?
Some of the artists have actually sold their artwork as a result, which is good. Some councils will use it, they'll put it up in a display, so some councils will put it in their shop windows to continue it on. Sometimes it'll end up in a library. Some councils will purchase some of the artworks. One of my concerns, when I said before, the scale is like this, so you've got really good quality stuff, and then down here I think, do we have to show that? But that's not, I can't do that, and some of it ends up in the garbage, and that bothers me, so we're working on that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sue.
Okay. Our next session is around keeping it round, collaboration, creativity and community education, community engagement, for FOGO recycling. So I'm just introducing Linda Tover. She's the education coordinator for North East Waste, and also Jeannie McKillop, coordinator of North East Waste. Welcome.